Liam's Map. This two-time Grade 1 winner posted 6 consecutive 100-plus buyer figures, including a 1:14 in the Grade 1 Woodward Stakes, the fastest winning time in more than a decade. An $800,000 yearling, he never finished off the board in 8 starts, winning 6. In his final race, this great colt set the track records at Keeneland in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. All this adds up to a world-class stallion at a world-class stallion farm.
Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Mike Beer, taking a look at the post positions for the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Classic. Let's throw up the field. Our Breeders' Cup Classic coverage is presented by Liam's Map at Lane's End. We have an overflow field, Mike, for the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Classic, and the favorite Accelerate drew post position 14. And when you hear that, it's startling, and you're like, oh, it's a terrible post position. I don't really think it's that terrible considering the long run, the very long run, the 2-furlong run into the first turn at Churchill Downs.
I agree. I don't see why it's a bad post at all. As a matter of fact, he probably got one of the better draws in the race. He's drawn outside everybody else in here. Everybody sort of knows the deal with the post positions at 1.25 miles at Churchill Downs because we talk about it every year when they draw the Kentucky Derby field. Everybody's thrilled when they get post 14 or thereabouts when they draw the Derby. I don't see why it would be any different in this race. This horse is drawn fine.
Well, then let's talk about the horses down towards the inside. The number 2 Roaring Lion will be making his dirt debut. There's no doubting his class and quality. He's coming into this race off 4 Group 1 races on the turf, and 1.25 miles isn't a problem. But I know that John Gosden is very disappointed with this post position because I think the last thing he wants his horse to take is a lot of kickback.
Yeah, it's just a terrible post. I mean, if you want to, know who the best, and best is relative a lot of times. You want to know who the best horse in the race is? It's Roaring Lion. He's a super talented 3-year-old, but he's not a dirt horse, and I got to believe they're disappointed drawing down inside. I mean, as you sort of were referencing, the last thing they want is this horse to get dirt kicked in his face, and from down there with all the speed to his outside, he's going to get plenty of dirt kicked in his face. It makes this was a tough test for him anyway. It makes it even tougher.
The last time Thunder Snow was slated to run 1.25 miles at Churchill Downs, things didn't work out very well in the Kentucky Derby, and he threw a fit breaking from post position 2.
Right.
He breaks from the rail here. He does have the speed, I think, to obtain a good position, but it's so difficult breaking from the inside with that scrum of horses trying to save as much ground, putting the pinch and the squeeze on the horses down towards the rail.
True enough. I mean, I don't know if drawing post 2 in the Derby. Yeah, I mean, you got to come out of there running. He has no choice. I don't know if he's fast enough to get all the way up to the lead, but he's got to come out of there running and try and get a position. Again, I don't know how much drawing post 2 and last year's Derby had to do with what went wrong with him. It probably didn't have all that much to do with it. Something else was going on that day. But otherwise, I mean, if you take that race out, his dirt form is actually pretty good. He ran a fine race last time. I didn't love that he didn't win the Jockey Club Gold Cup last time with the trip he got, but he's a pretty good dirt horse, and I think he's fast enough to get a spot in this race.
You could argue that Catholic Boy has more natural speed than both Roaring Lion and Thunder Snow. Breaking from post position 3, Javier Castellano has to use that speed. Now, I'm not sure he's fast enough to make the lead, but with that speed, he can at least grab a decent spot, perhaps without being impeded and intimidated too much.
To me, he'll be one of the more interesting horses just to see what kind of trip he gets in this race. Because if he gets a good one, I guess he's a contender. It's interesting to pull apart his PPs, and I know that there could be other excuses for his Florida Derby, which is obviously the worst race he's ever run. That's also the only time really in his entire career where he was faced with a fast pace. He's going to be faced with a fast pace again in this spot. I wonder how he handles it.
Well, it was interesting to see that he came from out of it in the Remsen as a 2-year-old. That was sort of his breakthrough performance. And I guess the same running style's coming here. I doubt we'll see him right up close on the pace as we saw in the Travers and in his 2 breakout turf races earlier this year. Let's take a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector, and I think we can disagree with it. The pace might be fast. I'm not sure about that. I think it would be more fair than fast. They have the 7 West Coast on the lead, and I know West Coast wired the Travers back in 2017, but he to me seems more like a tracking type. Don't you think that Baffert's other runner, the 6 McKinsey, or perhaps the 9 Mendelssohn, are more likely to make the front than West Coast?
I think so. I'd be surprised if he was on the lead in this race.
They'd take it if they gave it to him.
Yeah, they certainly would. They didn't want it for some reason the Dubai World Cup, but I think they would take it this time. And I think you're right. The fast pace, maybe it'll be fast. I think it'll be more like, honest or legitimate, because these are good horses. They're not going to be walking up there. I don't think West Coast will be on the lead in here, but I think he will be up close.
I think he'll be up close. I think it'll be somewhat of a situation of the 6, 9, and 7 completing the early 3 positions after the first quarter mile. And I think if the Accelerate folks take that spot, they take it every single day, sitting in 4th with Thunder Snow back in 5th. Let's talk about the 1-run closers in this race. Where is Mind Your Biscuits going to be? Because I don't know if he's a 1-run closer at 1.25 miles. I mean, at 6 furlongs, he likes to come from back. 1.125 miles, he was able able to sit up close. I agree with Timeform US having him in this spot. The question is, he got the 9. A lot of people never thought he'd get the 9. Will he get the 10?
I don't know if he'll get to 10. It's obviously the big question in the race as far as his chances are concerned. I think that's probably right. When they've gone longer with him, the route races, and it's only been a few, he just sort of lands middle of the pack. He's gotten some good trips. Last time in the Lucid Classic when he won 9 furlongs, boy, that was a pretty soft-looking pace to me, and he just sat right up close. He's not going to be able to run like that in this race. They're going to go faster, but I think he'll be somewhere middle of the pack. We'll see if he gets a clean trip, and then he can handle the 10.
If this red bar is correct, and Timeform US is right with its assessment of the pace projector, and the pace is fast, which one of the closers would be the one that you take? Guinevere is rated last, probably because horse lacking pace data is your European entrant Roaring Lion. Right. I would expect him to be back there with Guinevere. Would you say that Guinevere is the best closer, or is it a Yoshida? Or if you really want to go out on a limb, you could say Discreet Lover.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say he's the best closer, but if I had to take a closer, I'd be taking Guinevere. And I think this is just a lot of sort of things pointing to him in this race. Third off the layoff now. When you compare the trip he got with the trip Yoshida got in the Woodward last time, and they both got good ones into a pace that was falling apart late, this horse was wide every step of the way. I thought he finished up almost as well as Yoshida did. I'd take him over that horse this time.
So I think we would argue that the horse that got hurt the most in the post position draw was the number 2 Roaring Lion.
I think so.
Thunder Snow, no favors perhaps drawing the rail either. And really, I think you make a good point. The key to the race is what kind of trip Catholic Boy gets. I think it is imperative for him to break, because if he doesn't break and finds himself in behind horses early and then being shuffled down towards the inside, I find it hard for him to overcome that.
Listen, I agree with all that stuff. I mean, he's clearly a good horse, but he's also a horse stepping into really the toughest dirt race of his entire life. He needs not just the pace and get a good spot off the pace somewhere. He needs a lot of things to go right for him in this race.
Accelerate, post 14. Again, at first glance, you're like, ooh, that's not going to be easy. I think John Sadler's very, very happy with that, because this horse has the natural speed to obtain a tracking spot, and perhaps most importantly, be out in the clear and free of traffic. The $6 million Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Classic set for Saturday. Stay tuned to DRFTV for all the Breeders' Cup analysis, and our Breeders' Cup Classic coverage on DRFTV is presented by Liam's Map at Lane's End.